Now we need to trim our quilt. I've got it laid out on a folding table, a couple of cutting mats. This is the top of my quilt. This is where I'm going to start. So I get a nice even line here. I'm going to do the top, then the sides, then the bottom. What I like to do is look for some nice seams. Like that. And try and line up. It's not the straightest seam. The seam is straighter up here. Try and line up the line of your ruler along your seam. I know my seam isn't perfect, but I also want to look and make sure I've got my quilt. I've kind of got it a little wonky on the table, so I'm going to just tug it to make sure I've got it straight on the table. The problem for me, my biggest problem, is I don't have a lot of space, like a big giant cutting board or anything, so I use the folding table, and I don't want anything to touch the floor, so it's folded up on itself. When you've got a nice line, that looks pretty good. And I can't hold the camera and cut. Oh, that's the canary. Every time I try to put a camera on him, he stops singing, so we'll just leave him alone. That looks good. It's almost straight. Let me just pick it up one more time and show you. You can see I'm going to lose a little bit here, but in general, it's pretty good. I want to get that cut as straight as we can. But again, for me, it doesn't need to be perfect. I really don't worry about things being perfect. I want to get it as even as possible. I'm going to move my hand along the ruler. I'm probably blocking the camera, sorry. Now I've reached as far as I can go with the ruler. I'm going to move it up, line it up along where it's already cut because I know it's straight, and then I can also check and try and line it up along the seam up here and make sure I'm straight here, and then I'll cut all the way to the top. Top part is cut. I'm going to rotate the quilt and go down the sides. The reason I did that is because when I go down the sides, anything that doesn't have stitching on it, I want to save. I've got a nice selvage edge here, so I didn't want to cut this off and waste that piece. This is going to cut all the way down. I'm going to have a nice long strip. Let's go ahead and rotate the quilt. Here's the top. Here's the side going toward the bottom over here. You can see as we go along, especially right here. See that? I used two different kinds of pre-cuts, if you remember, so the little pinked edges were a little bit different. My side seams aren't particularly straight the entire way down. What I'm going to do, again, I'm going to look for a straight seam, and then I want to make sure this is straight along the bottom, which it's not. Let's move this. Now I'm straight along the bottom. Oh, that looks good. So this is even, straight with the top. That looks good. This right here, even though it's a little short, I'll watch when I put on my binding. It looks like I'm within 1/4 of an inch. It should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and cut up the side. This side is cut. This, I'll show you what I do to organize my scraps after I cut the rest of the quilt. I'll go ahead and cut the other side. Same process as this. You'll do the bottom just like you did the sides. Go off your square edge, find a line. I like to just sort of pull it and say, yeah, that looks straight, and then I'll slide this back up. And I've got a square edge, so that's great. We're going to go ahead and cut all the way to the top. We are getting quite the bird song today. Everything is cut. I have it folded in the middle so I can get the whole quilt on the table. What I want to look at is my two sides. I want to measure the width and the width of these outside rows just to see if they're even. You don't have to do this. I'm more curious than anything. Let's have a look. That's a canary, folks. He is really loud. It's just a little over 4.5. And then let's go to the other side. It's a little over 4.5. Oh, that's great. I'm happy with that. If one of these came out, let's say this one was 4.5 and this was 4 3/4, I would cut a 1/4 inch off so that visually, if you have the quilt draped over something or on a bed, the two sides would be even, although honestly, most people probably won't notice. I'm going to show you what I do with the quilt cutoffs, the scraps. Here are all my cutoffs from the quilt. This, not usable. Sometimes, actually, I'll just keep it like this and I'll go dust some things. I used to save all this and I would cut it into smaller pieces and I would stuff pillows and dog beds and stuff. We have so many now, it just becomes quite a bit. The plain cotton is supposedly biodegradable. I haven't tried putting it in the composter yet. This really isn't very much left over, so I will save this. Probably, and actually these little tiny pieces that have the batting, sometimes I'll put them like this in with some of my sewing machines and I just use them as test scraps. If I'm going to make bags, I can check my tension. But other than that, not really savable. These two I'm going to save. The first thing I'm going to do is trim this off because you can see the stitching, so the batting is stuck to this piece of fabric. So that little piece is going to come off and that'll be waste. The strips of batting I save. I use them when I make other projects. And then I'll show you how I store the fabric scraps. Here's the fabric. There's the batting over there folded on the corner of the table. Let's go ahead and straighten the tripod and pull one out of the way. I'm going to take this one, it's a nice long strip, I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half. And while I have everything set up, I'm going to even out these edges and see how wide it is. If it's not at least 2.5 inches wide, I usually don't save it. This will easily be over 2.5 inches. Let's trim it up. Let's see what we ended up with down here. Just over 3.5. That's great. We're going to do the other one and then I'm going to show you how I store these so they're easy to use. And again, I like to do this at the same time I'm trimming my quilt. That way it gets done. Don't take your fabric scraps and go like that and throw them in a bin or a drawer and then you know how it goes. A few months later you go to pull something out and say, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with all those fabric scraps? And you do nothing and you shut the drawer because it's overwhelming. So take a few minutes while you're trimming your quilt and take care of your scraps. I'm going to go ahead and trim this one. Let's see what we have for this one. This one measures just over 4 inches. Now, I've used this fabric in a couple of quilts lately for backing and binding and things like that. I already have a little pile going. I'll show you what I do with the fabric. So this is a big pile. I mean, this is it for this quilt. I've made a couple backings, and because I like using selvage to selvage, I have extra. You can see this says it's 30 by 64, and I put the color Bella Green Tea. This one is 62 by 36. And then I have a couple of just oddball strip size cutoffs. I'm going to keep everything together, and then I have a smaller strip over here. This was from a project I already did. So if this was the first project and all I had were those two, I would still take one of the little tiny cutoffs. I use it as a string. Tie it up, and I have a scrap drawer that I use. This is plenty to make a quilt, to mix with something else to make a quilt. And knowing that I've got this 62 by 36 and a 30 by 64, I can piece those together to make a backing for a small project. Let's go put this in the drawer and then we'll do the quilt binding. Here we are. White yardage, neutral and dark. That's going to be where this goes. Wide back fabric. Here you can see similar things. See, I tie everything up. I keep it nice and neat. This is a nice piece. And any leftover, I like to mark how much I have so I know. That's going to go right in there. Now we are organized. Look at this. That would make a fun quilt, wouldn't it? Green and purple. Let's go on to binding.